You know that person. You've seen them pull into the parking lot, and you felt it before you even turned around. The sound is quiet, almost eerily quiet, but the presence, anything but. It looks like something that fell out of a science fiction film and landed squarely in a suburban Costco parking lot. Angular, massive, uncompromising. Like someone handed a 12-year-old a ruler and said, design the future. It's the Tesla Cybertruck. And the person stepping out of it, they're already watching to see if you're watching. But here's the question that nobody actually asks. Why? Not why did Tesla build it? Not why does it look like that? The real question is, what is going on inside the mind of the person who decided to buy one? Who are they, really? What are they trying to say? And what are they afraid to say out loud? Because this isn't a car video. This is a psychology documentary. And the Cybertruck just happens to be the most revealing personality test on 4 wheels ever built. Think about the last time you saw one on the road. You noticed it. Everyone noticed it. That's not an accident. The Cybertruck doesn't blend in. It can't. It wasn't designed to. Every line on that vehicle screams disruption. It's stainless steel, a material that scratches visibly and can't be painted. There's no grille, no curves, no visual softness anywhere. It looks like a military bunker that learned to drive. And yet people waited years for it. Paid deposits. Told their coworkers about their reservation numbers like they were lottery tickets. The person who owns a Cybertruck didn't stumble into this purchase. There was no moment of, well, it was on sale. This was a deliberate, public, emotional commitment. They saw something in that machine and said, yes, that's me. So what does that mean? Most people see a Cybertruck and assume one thing: this person just wants attention. And that's a fair first instinct. The vehicle is objectively impossible to ignore. It commands space visually and physically. People photograph it at traffic lights. Kids point at it. It generates reactions everywhere it goes. So the obvious conclusion is that the person driving it craves that attention. They want to be seen. They need the spotlight. Some people go further. They assume arrogance, maybe even insecurity dressed up as boldness. Look at me. I can afford something nobody else has. I'm not like the rest of you, and I want you to know it. It's easy to dismiss the Cybertruck driver as someone performing status. Someone whose identity is so fragile they needed a $70,000 prop to hold it together. But that's only part of the story, and honestly, it might be the least interesting part. Here's where it gets interesting. Psychology doesn't actually describe Cybertruck buyers as attention seekers in the way most people imagine. In fact, many of them share a specific and quite unusual trait: a profound discomfort with conformity. Not the rebellious teenager kind of discomfort. Something deeper, a genuine, almost visceral resistance to doing what everyone else is doing, simply because everyone else is doing it. Think about it. The most popular vehicles in America are invisible on purpose. White SUVs, gray trucks, silver sedans. These are calculated choices made by people who want reliability without the social risk of standing out. The color, the shape, the brand, all of it is optimized to disappear into traffic. The Cybertruck buyer made the exact opposite decision. And that tells you something profound about how they see the world, and more importantly, how they see themselves. There's a concept in psychology called identity signaling. The idea is that the objects we choose, especially visible ones, function as communication, not just to others, but to ourselves. What we drive is not simply transportation, it's a statement. And the Cybertruck is perhaps the loudest statement any consumer product has made in decades. But here's the twist. The statement isn't always "look at me." Sometimes it's something quieter and more profound. Sometimes it's "I refuse to choose what I was supposed to choose." Cybertruck buyers skew toward people who have a high tolerance, sometimes even a hunger for being misunderstood. They are often early adopters in multiple areas of their life. Not just technology, ideas, careers, relationships. They made unconventional choices before it was popular, and they're comfortable with the friction that creates. Most people never realize this. They see the truck and assume ego. But the driver may actually be someone who spent most of their life not fitting in, and finally decided to stop pretending they did. You've probably met this person at work. They're the one who brought up Bitcoin in 2015 when everyone laughed. They installed solar panels before the tax credits made it obvious. They switched careers at 40, not because they were failing, but because they decided that comfort was not the same thing as meaning. Or maybe it's your neighbor, the one who takes the long route, always. Who reads about things nobody asked them to read about? Who has opinions formed before the consensus caught up? They're not contrarian for sport, they genuinely see something others haven't seen yet. And they've learned to trust that vision even when it earns them weird looks. The Cybertruck is the physical expression of that worldview. It's saying, I evaluated the options. I chose the one that no algorithm recommended. I chose the one that made people uncomfortable. Because that's who I am. But what does that really mean? Here's the layer nobody talks about. Underneath the boldness, underneath the deliberate visibility, there's often a very old and very familiar wound. The need to be different is rarely born in a vacuum. It usually comes from a history of being invisible, or worse, being made to feel that who you were was not quite enough as is. Many Cybertruck drivers, if you talk to them long enough, would describe some version of a life where they played by the rules and found the rules disappointing, where they followed the expected path and arrived at an expected mediocrity. And somewhere along the way, they made a decision, a quiet but total decision, to stop editing themselves down, to stop choosing the sensible option because someone else said it was sensible. The Cybertruck, then, isn't really about attention. It's about permission. Permission they gave themselves, finally, to take up space. Think about that. How many decisions do we make each day to shrink, to be palatable, to not cause friction? The car you choose is just one of 10,000 daily decisions where most people choose to disappear a little. The Cybertruck driver stopped disappearing. Whether that was courageous or complicated depends on which direction you're looking from. We'd be dishonest not to mention it. Because the Cybertruck, more than almost any other product on the market, is inseparable from its creator. Elon Musk is not just a brand, he's a polarizing cultural signal. And buying a Cybertruck in this climate isn't a neutral act. It's a statement that will earn you different reactions depending on who's standing in the parking lot. Some will admire it, some will roll their eyes, some will assume things about your politics without asking. And the person who chose the Cybertruck anyway, they accepted that. Maybe they expected it. Some of them honestly wanted it. There's a certain type of person who doesn't just tolerate controversy, they use it as a filter. They'd rather be clearly themselves and face real reactions than be vague and earn false warmth. They want the friction to be visible, because the friction tells them who's really paying attention. Here's the thing about all of this. The need to stand out, to signal difference, to take up space loudly, it's not unique to Cybertruck buyers, it's one expression of something deeply human. We are all, in our own way, choosing how much of ourselves to show. Every car in every parking lot is a small negotiation between who we are, who we want to appear to be, and who we're afraid we might become if we let go of the guardrails. The person in the sensible gray sedan isn't less complicated than the Cybertruck driver. They've just chosen a different answer to the same question. How much of yourself are you willing to put on display? What's rare about Cybertruck buyers isn't their need for visibility. It's their willingness to own it without apology. To say, yes, I know you're looking. I chose this knowing you would look. And I did it anyway. That's not always ego. Sometimes it's just courage wearing a strange shape. What does it mean to live authentically in a world designed for conformity? Most of us, most of the time, curate ourselves. We choose the car that fits in, the job that sounds respectable, the opinion that earns nods at dinner parties. We sand down the edges of who we actually are because the edges make people uncomfortable. But sometimes a person gets tired. Sometimes they stop asking for permission and they pull into the parking lot in something that looks like it was designed on another planet, and they get out slowly and they don't apologize for the stares. Maybe that's reckless. Maybe it's just honest. Here's the question worth sitting with. Not about the Cybertruck, not about Elon Musk, not about electric vehicles or stainless steel or the future of transportation. The real question is this: is there a version of you that you've been keeping in the garage? A choice you haven't made because it was too visible, too unusual, too likely to earn confused looks from people whose approval you're not sure you should need? The Cybertruck driver decided the answer was yes, and they drove it out anyway. What would you drive if you stopped editing yourself down?